If you have tried loosening your upper back with little to no results, then there's a good chance you're either not doing it right or you're just not targeting the correct muscles. And that's why, as a sports massage therapist, I'm going to be showing you how to get rid of that tightness in your upper back using a simple massage cane. My name's Adam, and I can tell you right now that one of the biggest reasons for your upper back pain has actually nothing to do with your upper back. It has everything to do with your chest. Now, I know you're feeling it right there, and I'm going to show you how to get rid of that pain in a moment. But let me just quickly show you where you should be starting and why this is effective. When you think of your upper back pain, you have to think of it as a game of tug of war. You have one side here pulling, and you have one side here pulling, right? You have the front and you have the back. And there we have a rope with a center piece. Well, what you're feeling right now isn't necessarily shortened and tight. You're actually feeling the muscle being stretched out and tight, meaning the back here is actually more like this, with that centerpiece on this side and the back a lot longer than the front. So, what does this actually mean? Well, what's happening here is the muscles in the front of the body are actually pulling on the joints, like the scapula, for example, resulting in the rhomboids getting stretched out and feeling tight. This is what you're feeling, but this is what's causing it. And this is why we need to start right here first, loosen this fucker up, and then this will allow the back to be released and loosened up a lot easier. So with that said, let me quickly show you how to work on the pec major, and then we'll work on the upper back. So if we're using just a massage cane, then I'm going to be taking this longer portion and using my other hand to kind of just begin poking around and trying to warm up the muscle, basically. I'm going to go all the way around the tissues as high as I can up into the collarbone, right underneath it. And I'm just poking around, trying to see if I can find anything that feels different, anything that feels stuck. Now, for women, all you're going to be doing here is just simply using your other hand to pull away the fat tissue so you can get into the muscles beneath it. But the whole idea of this is to not only just kind of warm up the muscles, poke around a little bit, but we're also looking for the most tender spot here. So after I've done walking around the pec major, going up into the areas for about 30 seconds to a minute, I'm then going to just search and find that one tender spot so I can begin working on it. And there's several ways we can be working on this area, right? So let's just say there's a nice little tender spot right here. I can start off by just doing some micro movements by going back and forth and side to side on it. Now, a lot of people will kind of go with the muscle fibers. I'll show you in a second what direction that goes. But when it comes to micro movement specifically, the goal here is to think of it as applying pressure directly to that one spot and then just working on the areas as you hold pressure there. So one direct pressure and you're kind of less direct going around it, trying to open everything up basically. But if you want to kind of go with the actual direction of the muscle fibers, then we know that the sternum and the shoulder and the ribs is the direction it kind of goes across the chest. And when it contracts, shoulder gets pulled in towards the sternum. And we can know, and by knowing this, we can take advantage of the way the tissues are manipulated in a little bit. But first, let's talk about stripping. And not the one where you're just, ooh, ooh, ooh. No, no, no. What we're going to be doing here is actually just stripping it out towards the insertion. We have to think about this. We're stripping from in to out, trying to open up the chest here. So as you're stripping it, though, you can basically just go along the muscle fibers. You can kind of feel where the tool will fall in here and just strip it out towards the insertion from origin to insertion. But now this is where different muscle fibers, the direction comes into play. By knowing that the fibers go from sternum to shoulder, sternum to ribs and all that to clavicle, what we can actually do is do what's called a pin and stretch. We know contracting is this way, so stretching is this way, right? If you want to stretch out the chest, open it up. So what that means is the fibers are going to go towards that stretch, towards the shoulder. And what we want to do is actually pin the opposite direction as it does that. So I'm going to passively pull my chest into a contraction. I'm trying to get as much tissue as I can, as close to the sternum as I can. I'm then going to use my pointy pull, my pointy spot, to insert into that tissue and drive it towards the sternum as I now stretch out the chest here. The idea is, since the tissues are going this way, I want to drive in the opposite direction here in order to get the best results in releasing it. So one more time, chest in, passively contracted. I'm going to find a nice little tender spot. I'm going to pin it down and hold it. And now I'm going to take that chest and stretch it. Ooh, that's a good one right there. As far as you can, and even in different angles and directions here. Now, of course, you don't need to work on the pec major. You can also work on the pec minor, which is located right in the top portion. You just got to go straight through the pec major. It is a lot easier to get through the pec major if it is passively contracted. So doing this on the floor is probably the best way in order to release it, just facing up and arm across the body. That will passively contract the chest and allow an easier access into the pec minor. And the same thing goes with the subclavius, the little tiny muscle underneath the bone, the clavicle. I wouldn't probably use a tool for that specifically. You got your thumb that can work perfectly on that. All you got to do again, roll the shoulder forward a little bit, get some passive contraction in the muscle, and that allows you to get deep and underneath the clavicle here in order to access it and work on the muscle as much as you can. You want to go underneath, look for a nice tender spot, and you can do the same techniques, a little bit of stripping, micro movements, or even a pin and stretch, pin it down, just roll the shoulder back and forth. The next up, we're going to be working on the actual upper trap. So the areas we want to work on here is actually going to be basically the top of the shoulder, right around there, all the way across, and then up into the neck region. So this is our target zone. And the one area I like to aim for specifically is this one spot that we all have this knot in. And the reason why is because that is where your levator scapula is also located, the deeper muscle, the deeper upper trap muscle. So muscle fibers go from the head down into the shoulder and down into the body, kind of follows the direction of where it starts and ends in the muscle. And again, by knowing this, we can manipulate the tissues here by shrugging, stretching, contracting, doing things like that while the muscle is pinned down. So just starting off, go ahead and begin warming up that muscle just by grabbing, poking around, looking for the most tender spot here. And again, I found a nice little spot in this area, right on the top portion where that levator scapula is also located. So once I'm able to find it, we can then do those micro movements. Everything kind of becomes a pattern once you start to see the pattern here. We're going back and forth and side to side. A little harder to do with the massage cane, but if this is all you got, that's all you got. My recommendation, by the way, is to use a ball against the wall to kind of hit these areas, or even just lean up against something with the ball if you also have one of those as opposed to this. This is great for some things. The ball is also great for other things. This is why we use them in combination to get the best self-massage techniques. Back to upper traps. So again, micro movements, back, forth, side to side. If you wanted to strip this muscle, a little harder to kind of follow, but what I like to do here is get some passive contraction by tilting the head back. And then from here, I'm going to kind of just grab it, and I'm just going to then strip it down as I kind of stretch the upper traps as well. Again, stripping the muscles is a little hard if you have a shirt on, but you know, we do what we can here for the demonstrations. The idea, though, of the stripping is you just kind of want to make sure you're going away from the head, start from the head, and go down towards the body. And again, you can stretch it either passively lifting the shoulder, pin it down, and then you can just drop. For this, I'm trying to use my other hand to pin it down, even though it's a little awkward. Up, pin, and then go down. And then you can also do a nice little neck stretch here, pin it down with the head up, and then straight down, or a combination of the two to get the most stretch out of the upper traps. So again, the patterns here kind of become the same, right? We have some different movements here, different stripping techniques, and different pin stretches we can do on the different muscles, all by using this one tool. Oh, and by the way, if you like these in-depth tutorials on how to do these self-massage techniques, then make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It's definitely going to help my channel grow. Now, from the upper chest, we're going to move into the rhomboids, not the chest here, but the rhomboids. So again, we want to try to find the scapula here because that's going to be the edge of the rhomboids. And then we're going to go into the spine, and that is going to be your muscle. So between the spine, the edge, and then between the scapula, that is pretty much one side of your rhomboids. And of course, you have two of them. You have the minor and the major, but in this case, they're both next to each other, and we can pretty much target them both at the same time, especially when doing these massage techniques. So again, look for the most tender spot here. I begin to kind of poke around and pull in. What I'm doing here is I'm taking this and pushing that way, let go, move to a spot, pushing that way, let go, different spot, and just repeating this process throughout the entire muscle. I'm also really trying to make sure I get close into that spine, maybe even pull my arm away, which will then stretch the rhomboids out and allow a little easier access in there. So these are kind of little other extra tips to get the muscle stretched out and to work on those extra deep spots. So again, though, working on the most tender spot that you find, we can then do some micro movements, some back to forth, side to side. You know how to do these already. We can do a pin stretch. If we want to do this, we start with it passively contracted. I'm then going to take my other arm and pull it in on that muscle. And then this other arm sweeps forward, going underneath the body here. So one more time from the side, pin it, and then sweep it in order to stretch out the rhomboids. Now, one little thing I actually do enjoy doing here is what I call separating the tissues. The idea of separating the tissues here is that you have bone, you have connective tissue, you have muscle, right? Blah, blah, blah. You want to try to separate them all from one another in order to allow each one to move independently. Now, of course, we're not actually doing this. We're not going to be able to separate them, and we don't really want to separate them. But the idea is that we want to get rid of that tension that they're constantly pulling. So when one thing gets contracted, hopefully it's not pulling on the rest of the body, and therefore creating some kind of back pain, or in this case, upper back pain. So in this situation, what we want to do is we're going to start right next to those rhomboids. And the rhomboids pretty much go vertical, right? They go at an angle a bit, but for right now, they're going up and down. And what you want to do here is essentially start at the top or the bottom, and we're going to strip it by trying to drag that point up and down the rhomboid, up and down the scapula, sorry. So what I'm doing here, I kind of have leverage on my shoulder with the hand on the other side. I'm going to pin the bottom part, and then I'm going to lift my arm, but keeping it level. That's going to help drag that point up the scapula and kind of strip out, separate the tissue, separate the muscle and the scapula itself. One more time here, and I'm just going to lift the shoulder, push down my hand in order to strip it out. You can also do the same thing on the spine. I'm going to go right next to the spine. I'm going to touch it with the tool here, with the massage cane, and then I'm going to go right next to it, around that muscle. And again, same exact principles here. I'm going to push, and I'm going to drag up in order to help begin separating those erectors, more likely, away from the spine, again, to allow everything to move independently. So you have all these different little techniques. Now, there's one more muscle I actually want to show you how to work on. It's not necessarily in the back, it's actually in the upper head. And in this situation, we don't want to use a massage cane. We actually want to use our fingers here. So bringing this camera up now, we can see the back of the head. What we're looking for here is the suboccipitals. This is basically the muscles underneath the skull. and right next to the spine. So you have the skull going this way, spine in the center, and they're going to be in these little pocket areas, right? Little triangles. There, I'm going to be using my thumbs, and this is best done laying down. But I'm going to use my thumbs and my fingers to kind of begin massaging out these areas. I'm going to push with one side, let go, push with the other side, and let go. And again, I'm doing the same idea here that I did with the massage cane. I'm just going to warm it up and look for the most tender spot here. Once I'm able to find a nice little spot I want to work on, I can do some micro movements by going back and forth and side to side. I can do a nice little stripping technique by starting at the top and stripping down. I can even start with my head tilted back and strip down as I tilt my head down. And I can even do technically a pin and stretch. It's a little difficult here with the suboccipitals. They're kind of hard to stretch out, but the idea here is that we're going to pin it down and we're just going to kind of tilt the head as much as we can. So tilting the head down should stretch it, and you want to kind of push up to get a passive contraction. So up, passive contraction, and then tilt down. Don't reach down. Try to only move that chin up and down in order to focus on only that movement. All right, that's it for this tutorial. Let me know how you liked it in the comment section below and what you learned. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one.